Teachers and professors, how did you secretly get back at that kid? Story 1. Not me, but this happened to my friends. Our bonus project in physics was making an eggmobile, a vehicle designed to move an egg using only the power of an elastic band. The mark you got for this project would replace the lowest test score you got on the unit tests during the year. 2 of my friends worked together on one. One friend was an average student, while the other friend was fairly smart, but pushy and argumentative, a real Steve Jobs type. They constructed their eggmobile out of Lego, and it did work. However, the physics teacher was a little tired of friend number 2 at this point of the year. The mark he gave was enough to give student 1 a nice boost, however, it was 1 point lower than student 2's lowest test score. We had the same project in school, with the aim being to get the egg as far as possible, but our teacher failed to mention that the egg needed to survive the journey. After several kids making spectacular cars from Technics and Lego, etc., I rocked up with my trebuchet egg and smashed all previous records. Please tell me you got a passing grade. This sounds like the kind of loophole I would have exploited back in school. It followed the rules to a T and was passed because of it. As far as I'm aware, the record still stands, and the project was amended to having an undamaged egg at the end of the journey. Another physics class loophole I exploited was a project where we were instructed to construct a bridge between 2 tables using a pack of straws, a length of tape, and our own ingenuity. The bridge had to hold 1 kilo weight, and the person who used the least raw materials would be considered the winner. Many awesome bridges were built, and some even held the kilo weight. However, all were undermined when it came to my turn, and I let across the gap between the 2 tables and put the kilo weight on my stomach. I successfully used 0 raw materials and held 5 kilo weights. Another record. I love science project ingenuitive thinking. I remember in physics we had to design a rubber band gun, and the person who could knock down the furthest away water bottle with a rubber band would win. However, you could only launch rubber bands, so no attaching weights to them or anything. But the rules did state rubber bands. Plural. So I took a 10-foot length of PVC pipe and knotted together about 50 rubber bands, doubled them over a few times, and just used the PVC pipe like a giant finger to stretch and aim the super series of rubber bands. Not only did I get the furthest distance, but the combined strength of all those rubber bands almost broke the back window of the science lab. Science! Story 2. Not secretly, but I learned to take copious notes and have a file on every student. Lazy students will often try to throw the blame on the teacher. I had 2 students request a meeting with the dean of students to discuss my unfair grading, and I showed up with a stack of evidence. Every substantive in-person interaction was documented on the front of the file, and I included copies of every email and note on the inside. There's nothing more embarrassing than coming face-to-face with your own laziness and being unable to wriggle free. They started paying attention after that. My boss always says that the team with the better documentation always wins. In my case, it's the team with the documentation that promises the most income that wins. Sales versus engineering is almost always a losing battle for the people who actually have to create the thing. I have a student who lied to my boss. She asked me to give her a point back on something, and I got fed up and just gave in. Well, she emailed my boss saying I didn't, basically trying to get around the system to get another higher grade. I then forwarded the email in which she confirmed she had seen her grade in the gradebook and confirmed her problem was resolved. My boss then emailed her back saying she sees no problem and CC'd me in the chain, so now the student knows I know she lied. Class should be interesting on Tuesday. Edit, I'll update you guys on how class goes next Tuesday. The university is on spring break, so we don't have class tomorrow. I'm planning an overly nice approach after giving my blanket statement about how I keep track of all student correspondences in a PC way. Tell them to stop being whiny bees. Document, document, document. Nothing quite as important these days as covering your butt, you know? And honestly, if I were a teacher, I would probably have security cameras covering my classroom at all times. I've seen the kind of crap students have done to teachers in these threads, and it's a hell of a lot worse than lying about bad grades. Story 3. High school teacher here had a little crap of a kid we'll call Anthony. Complained about everything, did no work whatsoever, talked crap about everyone, made fun of kids with disabilities, you name it. And of course, he was always the first to start shrieking that he was the victim of every situation. Everyone was against him. How come he always got picked on, and so forth. Now, in my teaching career, which has spanned the better part of a decade so far, I've taught more than 1,000 kids. Plenty of those have been bad kids. The thing about bad kids, though, is they're usually bad for fairly simple reasons. Crap going on at home, unmedicated or undiagnosed mental illness, trauma in their past. Hell, maybe just lonely. If you pay attention, you can find out why almost any kid is acting out. That said, out of 1,000+ kids, I've encountered maybe 10 who are genuinely broken people. You could call them sociopaths. No trace of empathy, no trace of conscience, or even inner life. People who basically exist to serve their own desires exclusively and have no compunctions about how they might most quickly realize those desires. Anthony was one of those kids. The worst thing about him was his constant tendency to immediately crap upon anything that anyone else had put effort into, including my lessons. We would nearly have these very vulnerable, tender moments in the classroom where kids were talking about big, important issues and really growing intellectually in awesome and uncomfortable ways, and then Anthony would call them effing gay or whatever else. Anthony, of course, begins making fun of her hair, her glasses, her face, loud enough that it's plausibly a whisper, but loud enough so that we can all hear what he's saying. I start walking toward his desk, but am interrupted when Patrice very, very calmly says, "F you, Anthony." The entire class was dead silent. This girl never spoke, let alone swore, and she said it with such self-control. Everyone's eyes are on me, waiting for me to react. Anthony starts screaming, "Did you hear that? She said F. You always get me in trouble when I say F. This crap ain't fair. How's this ugly bee gonna—" I say, "Huh? I didn't hear anything." Turn back around and continue the lesson. A few kids cheered. It felt really good. That's awesome. I don't know if you'll read this, but I just want to say it is teachers like you that made school manageable for people like me and that girl you mentioned. I went through my first 2 years in high school trying my absolute best to make new things and help out classmates, but it always led to me getting crapped on by people like that Anthony guy. Come junior year, I'd pretty much given up on trying to do anything interesting in high school, withdrawing from clubs and spending inordinate amounts of time alone in the library. It doesn't take a whole lot to whittle down a person's confidence, especially if they don't have good self-esteem in the first place. I definitely did not. But I hope that, due to the efforts of teachers like you, what happened to me doesn't happen to anyone else. Very nicely done. Oofda. Kids like Anthony are what kept me from becoming a teacher, because I just don't think I could have handled this situation half as well as the OP. Like, to come across a kid that I just couldn't connect with, I'm pretty sure I would lose it and would have been the one to say F you, Anthony, and probably some worse stuff. Hopefully Anthony is finding some kind of help in therapy or something, but more so, hopefully Patrice is kicking butt at life because she rules. Story 4. My stats professor said he saw a group of really talkative and distracting kids doing well, and he thought it was fishy. He looked at the tests and saw that they were all the same answers. Then he looked at the seating chart and noticed that they could all look over each other's shoulders to the front of the class where the smart, quiet girls sat. Solution? Give her a different test. Only her. When he handed back the tests, he told everyone who got under a certain grade, like 50%, to come see him. Each student got like a 10% or something. When they were alone, he basically said, "Well, this is your punishment for cheating. Don't do it again." I thought that was awesome. Edit. Sorry not to mention, this was a high school/secondary school stats class. If it were college, definitely should have been reported. I'm a stats teacher. This is similar to a kid in my class about 6 years ago. He was getting D's and F's all year, but then somehow aced a multiple choice test the first time I ever gave it. I didn't realize it, but I had accidentally left an answer key at the front table, which happened to be the answer key he saw and copied. I asked how he did so well, and he told me, after he bragged to everyone else, "I just worked really hard this time." Okay, fair enough. Maybe he did. So the next time around, I did the exact same thing, but I left the answer key at the front of the room, never moving it. He used it again, and this time got a 0. I pulled him outside the class and said, "How did you go from 100 to 0? He was cool about it, and when he knew what I was getting it, though. "Mr. Teacher, I have to come clean. I copied the first one and then tried to do it again." I said, "I know," and told him he could retake the second test if he also retook the first test, which he did. He passed each test by 1 point, but it was legit, so I was proud. Edit. I appreciate the comments and kind words. Sort of validates my teaching philosophy, something I've been changing and molding for several years. If you have a teacher you like, thank them. A lot of us hear complaints more than compliments, which wears heavy on you over time. It's replies like these that remind me why I stay in the game. Thank you. Can't really blame him. Up until the second test, his strategy had a 100% success rate. Way too small a sample size. Damn, here I was complimenting teachers embarrassing kids, but I've got to admit, this method certainly seems a little more effective. Like, really smart and frankly compassionate. I like it, and hopefully that is the kind of lesson that sticks with those kids. Also, hopefully the actual subject matter of the class sticks with them, because holy crap are people bad about statistics these days. If you don't believe me, spend 2 minutes on Facebook and see what certain relatives are posting. Story 5. These two girls in my econ class were cheating all the time. They turned in this paper on the Federal Reserve that didn't get picked up with the plagiarism checker, but they both turned in the exact same paper as each other. I told them, you guys did a great job on this paper. You get 50% and you get 50%. In retrospect, I shouldn't have done it in front of the class. I had a teacher who had this policy for every assignment. It sucks being on the other end, especially when you actually didn't cheat. You don't get a trial or an opportunity to defend yourself or anything. You don't even find out the names of who you allegedly cheated with. You just find out weeks later that you got a 33% on some homework assignment because you were allegedly cheating with a couple people. I had a group assignment when I was at university, and we all got hit with a plagiarism checker. I don't know if they're all the same, but this one picked you up if you had 10% or more in common with another student. It was a group project, so the method and intro was pretty much the same for all of us. When I submitted my dissertation, the plagiarism detector said I'd plagiarized myself. It detects all the papers submitted by students as well as articles and stuff, so I must be prone to using the same words in combination. Edit. A lot of people have mentioned you have to reference yourself, which is true. I only mentioned it because the detector picked up my page numbers, name, and student ID. I used the same template for every paper for consistency, and then fragments of sentences where I used the same sorts of phrasing and my bibliography. I didn't get in trouble, I just thought it was an amusing anecdote. How in the world is it illegal to write a bad review of a student? That kinda defeats the purpose of these reviews, doesn't it? A lot going on here, and I've got to say, it sounds like these plagiarism detectors need a little manual oversight. Now on to address a few specifics. Calling out those two in front of the others might be a little bad, but also they were old enough to know better. Sorry, if you want to cheat like that, then you're accepting some risks, you know? One might say that the bad grade is punishment enough, and that's fair. But also, the whole you get 50% and you get 50% thing was so good. How could the teacher not share it with that class? But yeah, really, they probably should have done it in private. Story 6. My abnormal psych, a 400 level class, so you would assume people in this class were interested in the field, had us visit a local homeless shelter. This was an accelerated night class, so classes were 4 hours long. She arranged for us to go during our normal class time. A few people in the class felt it was dumb or a waste of time and bailed just as the tour was starting. The final exam for the class was about 4 questions that were very easy to answer if you stayed for the whole tour and absolutely impossible if you did not. I remember doing a series of quizzes in an English class when we had to read chapters because plenty of the students weren't and the class was built on participation. If you didn't read, there was less classroom discussion. The best one was a 1-question fill-in-the-blank quiz that was a direct quote of the final twist line of one chapter. The quote looked innocuous enough to anyone that plenty of guesses might look right, but had you read the chapter, the answer was extremely obvious. Damn, 800 words? That's like 2 pages. Some of my responses on this site are longer than that. Edit. General response to people saying, "Oh my effing god, you need a whole hour to write 800 words?" Yeah, because I like to score 100%. It's not enough to simply get an A. I want the teacher to think Newton and Hemingway merged in a weird space-time experiment I made to have them be my writers. The little comments they leave like, funny, very thoughtful, read too much, researched, great job, come see me, etc. next to a 100% with a stupid smiley face makes me feel like I'm doing well. So I'll go back and convert sentences into haiku, add alliteration, put in puns, and so on because I want my graders to enjoy my writing. But hey, good for you for doing it quicker. The grade's all the same anyway. Edit 2. I ain't talking about English papers mostly. Hence depending on the class, that only takes about 1 to 4 hours. If you just word vomit without need for research, 800 words should be easy and quick to do. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.